There are fewer than 30 men in the world qualified to drive Formula One. A mere half dozen, perhaps, to win. At this moment, I'm inclined to think you're not one of them.
No, you want to. Keep up the good work, and there you have it. There you go. With the qualifying.
Welcome to F1Weekly.com. My name is Clark Rogers. I'm the host of the program. I'll be joined by Nasir Hamid, my co-host. This is podcast number 988, April 17th, 2023. Nasir.
Thank you, sir. I say 'tis the season of legal beagles. Kirpin going kaput. Some are hoping and wishing, and some are under pressure. We shall explain gladly. Back to you, Chief.
Thank you, Nasir. On today's program, Dornbos violently attacked. Yep, another effing watch. Will Max quit over the sprint race saga that he hates so much? LCH is hanging around Brad, and they're developing what you call a bromance, and it's deep and wild. Kirkwood wins in Long Beach, and we'll have a Tech Talk Tim report on that race, and he's already got us an interview. That's coming up in this podcast. And speaking of interviews, this week's interviews, we got a lot on the plate here, folks. Emma Scarbrough, up-and-coming young lady who's fast. We have Kiko Porto de Brazil. And we have an interview from McLaren Arrow race engineer Craig Hampson from downtown Long Beach. I also want to mention the Pacific Coast Dream Machines cars, planes, and motorcycles, and more. This April 30th coming up at the end of the month. F1 Weekly will be there. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be wonderful. Talk to me. We want to meet people. And just to remind everybody, we need your contributions to keep this program on the air. Just click on the Support F1 Weekly tab. You know you'll want to. Nas, welcome to the studio. What's really going on?
Well, I'll tell you what's going on. No cars on the track. I am down in the boondocks. Not sure how you feel about this, but I think a 4-week gap between races during the season should be against the law. This is dragging on and on. How are you holding up, Mr. Duke of Dijon?
Well, we can blame the Chinese, Nasir. We should have had a race just this last weekend in China, but that was canceled due to some kind of COVID activity. Nevertheless, it is what it is. They should have had a supplemental, a track on the side that's begging to get into Formula One. You just give them a call and they go, yeah, come on down. Like Alabama would have been good. But that's the way it is, Nasir.
There are no shortages of good tracks, but they have raced Formula One. Portimao in Portugal, Istanbul in Turkey, Sepang in Malaysia, but they are not interested in writing a $35 to $40 million check to Stefano Domenicali. But I have an idea for marketing purposes. Apparently the race will return to China next year. Maybe they can call it the Balloon Grand Prix to get the ratings higher.
Well, not only that, but the first 1,000 folk who come through the front gate get a balloon bobblehead.
There you go.
Gracias.
And how many will get the first?
The first 1,000 celebrating the F1Weekly.com 1,000 podcast.
Yes, and I think the next 1,000 should get a bobblehead of a F-16.
Bravo.
In pursuit. Well, this is what happens when there is no Formula One, folks.
Yep, that's what happens. It all just goes in the gutter.
Yes. Okay, let's take a look how the teammates are doing against each other. May I proceed with your express written consent, sir?
Isn't it funny? Wherever Fernando goes, Pedro de la Rosa is right there, right behind him.
Yeah, because he is the test driver. No, he's not the test driver. He's the ambassador for Aston Martin.
No, I have another word for it. He is the shadow.
Of Nando?
See,
Yes.
it's also mysterious.
Or maybe he's the digital footprint of Nando.
He's the balancing carbon footprint, the negative.
There you go. Okay, sir. Shall I proceed with how the teammates have done against each other?
Please, we need to get into some deep
Material. Okay, we shall start with the team that has won the first 3 races, Red Bull. Max leading the championship with 69 points and Checo on 54. As a team, they have 123 points. 3 championships in a row is on the go for the driver. Do you see anybody derailing his fast train?
Well, it depends. If this Mercedes shows up with some hips, then we may have a contender. But it's talked about, but it is the DRS speed that's where the Red Bull really shines and totally dominates. And that's where people all of a sudden were going, the other cars look like Formula 2 cars when Max is cruising down the freeway with the wind in his hair. So that's what's going on, Nasir. It is full domination.
Oh, so what you're saying is Alonso is running second behind Max and trying to take the lead. He's going to call and say, Formula 2 car, Formula 2.
Bravo!
Yeah, that'll be beautiful. Okay. Amazingly, second is Aston Martin with 65 points. Leader of the gang there is El Machismo with 45 points, followed by Daddy's Little Jim Clark, also known as Lance Stroll, on 20. This is quite a statement by a 40-plus-year-old hombre, but totally not surprising. The long-standing high and mighty of the hybrid era, Mercedes, are third in the championship with 56 points. And this is where it gets interesting at Mercedes. Number 2 has taken over the number 1 spot so far this season. Lewis has 38 points compared to George Russell on 18. And I'm sure it will change. Scuderia Ferrari is fourth with 26 points. Looks like the prancing horse is not as well fed as the Budweiser Clydesdales, hence the hangover in performance. Smooth operator Sainz Jr. is 5th in the championship with 20 points, while Leclerc is 10th with 6 points. Same as Haas driver Nico Hülkenberg. How sad is that? And Mr. Rogers, what a difference a year makes. Last year, after 3 races, Charles was leading the championship with a huge advantage over Max. Completing the top 5 is McLaren with 12 points. Lando Norris has provided 8 of those points, and new kid in town, Oscar Piastri, has pitched in 4. And now we look at the other half. Your home team, Alpine Renault, is 6th in the standings with 8 points. Both the drivers, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, have 4 points each, and not surprisingly, both crashed into each other in the last race. Haas is in 7th heaven. 6 of these points have come from Nico Hülkenberg, who is 9th in the championship, while teammate K-Mag has scored 1 point and is 17th in the championship. So basically, Nico is doing to K-Mag what K-Mag did to Mick Schumacher, proving once again what goes around comes around. Sauber Alfa Romeo is 8th in the championship with 6 points. Bottas, with the shiny rear end, has provided 4 of these points, while the Chinese driver Guan Yu Zhou has contributed 2. 9th is AlphaTauri with 1 point earned by Yuki Tsunoda, while Dutch teammate Nick de Vries is sitting on a duck. 10th and final team in the championship is Williams, also sitting on the loneliest number scored by their fast Thai driver Alex Albon. American teammate Logan Sargent has got the beat, but is yet to score his first point in Formula 1. Anything stands out for you, Mr. Rogers, apart from El Machismo choking Stroll?
Well, we knew that was going to happen. Come on, Nasir. I mean, being up against the Machismo, you know how tough that could be. But for me, I mean, I find this actually quite fascinating. Is what I call is the Bottas phenomenon. I mean, the guy is, you know how Lewis has got the pierced nose, the earrings, the tattoos up and down the body. Bottas, he grows a mustache and he shows his buttocks. Fairly innocent, but he's become a big star. I'm very impressed, but it's a clean-cut star. It's very hilarious, and I find it very amusing how Bottas has really reinvented himself after his release from the bonds of Mercedes.
Well, he's doing what he can with the car he has and the talent he has. Good thing is he did get into a race-winning machine, won some races, and won again Lewis Hamilton, which is not easy. You can just check with Machismo on that. So I'm happy for him, but he's now looking more like a guy from the Australian outbacks than from Espoo, Finland.
Very true, very true. Give him a Australian outback hat, and he'd be pretty happy with some Digo boots.
Yeah, his girlfriend is from Australia, and she's a professional cyclist, and he does a lot of cycling, so who knows? He may be hanging out in Australia after the racing is over. But we wish him all the best, and everybody all the best. And sir, moving on to, since we have three talk here, let's do our first interview. This is with young fast lady from Georgia, Miss Emma Scarbrough. I saw her a few weeks ago at the Orlando Kart Center, and she was running very good and running with the boys at the front, very impressive. So I had a chat with her, and we will keep an eye on her and follow her career as she moves up the ladder of motor racing. So I would like to thank Emma for her time. Her sister also races, so next time I go to a go-kart race, I'll do a conversation with her sister. So my thanks to Emma, and please enjoy the conversation. Okay, folks, I'm here in Orlando with the fast lady from Georgia. Emma, good to meet you. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thanks. I was here a few weeks ago, and I saw kart number 881 going fast. Please tell our listeners about the driver, which is you.
Well, I started racing a few years ago, and since then, I've gotten a lot better this year. Changed chassis, changed teams, and I've improved a lot.
Okay. And is the interest in racing coming from family, or is this your own agenda?
My dad always loved racing as I was younger, and he's always taking me to races and everything, but he never raced, so he started us in racing, and then I fell in love with it.
Is he pushing you? Is he like a racing dad, or you're loving it yourself?
I love it, but he also pushes too.
Okay.
So.
Okay, good. Okay, what is more exciting in racing, the thrill of speed or the joy of beating boys at their own game?
The thrill of speed. I think drivers, everyone makes a bigger deal about the girl drivers, but it's really everyone's still a racer out there, no matter if you're a girl or a boy. So it's just this, we all love it because of the speed and racing and everything, so it's not really just beating the boys, but it's nice.
Sure. And how long have you been racing, and what has been biggest challenge for you getting up to speed?
I started racing, I think, 2019 or 2018 in 206, and then we moved in 2021 to two-cycle and KA, and it was rough at first learning all the racing and with a much higher competition level, but just more seat time helped me improve, and different teams taught me different things and just improved a lot because of that.
You mentioned that you changed teams. When you are with the team, what is it that makes you feel that I need a change? Is it the performance? Is it the chemistry with the team members? Or what was the case with you?
I think a lot of it was more, I had good friends on the team. We got along well. I was there for a while. I learned a lot, but I felt like I needed a change in environment and maybe karts, and the kart that they had wasn't what was working best for me.
Okay. Do you have a driving coach, and are you setting your own path, or is somebody guiding your career at this stage?
Right now, I'm trying to figure out where I want to go and trying to start cars, but we don't have anyone specifically guiding us where we're going.
What does your heart say in terms of future plans?
I would love to be NASCAR or Indy or F1 driver, just somewhere at the high levels of racing.
Okay, so you're open to any form of racing. Any plans to race in European karting scene?
I'd like to travel there maybe during summer and start learning a lot of things from over there, because I know a lot of people go over there and they can learn a bunch of things and make some better drivers overall. So I'd like to go try that.
Okay. Do you look at lady drivers like Haley Deegan and Danica Patrick as role model? Or is Lando Norris your kind of guy?
All of them, every driver pretty much. Especially Haley Deegan. I really like following her and seeing where she's going and seeing how she's doing. And Lando Norris especially too.
What's the reason for him being your favorite?
I don't know, I've always thought he's like funny and nice to people, and he seems like a very well-rounded driver.
Now, you talk about Indy racing. This is my favorite question to all drivers who want to go into Indy racing. If you have a chance to win the Indy Championship or the Indy 500, what will you take?
I feel like I would take the Indy 500 because I feel like that's just a big race, and a lot of people remember the Indy 500 more than the Indy Championship.
That is a good choice, and I would say the same thing if anybody ever asked me that. Okay, your home state has a great track, Road Atlanta. Have you ever raced there or been to a race there?
Yes, I have. Not in a while, but I have been there. The track is amazing, and it's really fun, but it's not like any other track at all.
Now, racing, you need to be very fit and requires a lot of, workout. Do you have a racing coach, or do you do any special training for that?
I go to a gym and work out a lot and run. I have a path around my lake that we run. So I do things like that and do the rowing machine to make sure I still can run both classes and not be tired.
Okay, these days anything and everything is electronic, data-driven. When you get to see the telemetry of yourself and other teammates, where do you feel you can improve most to be more competitive?
I think running the mid-corner speed, I need to work on some of those things, rolling more speed in the corner, but I think we've gotten a lot better at it, and I'm still learning, but it's getting better.
And how many races you plan to do this year?
I plan to do all the USPKS, probably both Vegas's, and then most of skusa. I'm not sure how many though, because of family.
What's your favorite track in karting world?
I love Orlando and Newcastle.
The Mark Dismore track?
Sorry?
That's the one that's owned by Mark Dismore, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Great. Okay. No problem. Okay. We have listeners all over the world. Will you please tell them about your social media, your website if you have one, so they can follow your career?
It's Emma Scarbrough Racing, and just Instagram.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Emma, thanks for joining F1Weekly.com. Nasir?
Yes, sir. Moving on, looks like Brooke Benton has been performing in Miami. It has been a rainy night in Florida. The Dolphin Stadium has a lot of water, which is good for the fake marina, but not so good for the GP track. Hopefully the sun will be shining soon and the track will be Florida fresh come race weekend, which is not too far. Will Max go 2 in a row? I think so. He will do an orange crush on the competition. And Mr. Rogers, I was there last year and paid through the nose to watch the race. I'm not planning on doing this because ticket prices are through the roof once again. But on Saturday before the race, it's only a 4-hour drive from here. If the prices come down to earth, then I'm open to going there and drive and come back. But not counting on it. You looking forward to the second Miami Grand Prix, Senor?
I am looking forward to the second Miami Grand Prix. It should be interesting, a little soggy, and let's not hope it rains like that again for any time soon. But, wow, 25 inches in 24 hours. Anything would flood, so you can't blame the Floridians. It was a freak of nature. But no, it's going to be exciting. There's just so much going on. People getting beat up in the Netherlands. We've got, a pretty strange car accident in the last weekend's race in Portimao. Porsche wound up in the stands. I mean, it's been one hell of a weekend. We had NASCAR, we had Long Beach. I don't know, Nas. I was sort of busy.
Well, that's good. Moving on, Formula One says, show me the money, millions and millions. Listen to this, Hong Kong-based billionaire, and he has been in the news quite a bit, Calvin Lowe, would like to see a greater Asian presence in Formula One and is in talks with potential new teams. Lowe is the chief executive of insurance broker R.E. Lee International. He told Reuters he was considering backing a bid to enter in 2026, and this is the best part. Money was not the major hurdle, saying, and I quote, "The financial part, believe it or not, to me is actually not the biggest problem. It's actually gathering all the expertise, the mechanics, the whole team together into one unit." End quote. And Signor Stefano Domenicali, CEO of Formula One, wants to see an increase in the entry fee. Apparently $200 million that was agreed upon by all teams is not enough. As they say on Wall Street, fear goes, greed grows. I just hope they don't put this thing out of the reach of the Andretti group. This is a very important, well-deserved name that should be in motor racing in Formula One, and now they have the backing of GM/Cadillac. So it will be very sad if they up the ante to $700 million. And of course, there are places in the world where, operations are funded by deep-pocketed government with a lot of oil or this and that will be very, very sad. We don't need another HRT or Caterham and two teams with the same name in Formula One. How ridiculous was that? Your thoughts on this, Senor?
Yeah, the first thing I thought of is there they go again, knocking on Andretti's door and telling him you can't come in. I don't know, but yeah, $200 million is too little, especially after the assessment from last year that got the FIA president in trouble. And this, we all know that the B word is more preferred in Formula One than the M word. We're going to go into billions, I'm sure, which will price Andretti out unless he gets General Motors to foot the bill. But I don't see that happening, not with this electrification of the industry and the industry not sure of what to do, and with the government regulations coming down where they have to be so perfect by 2023 or 2035. I don't know. There's a lot of pressure on the automotive sector. We'll see what happens. Maybe Peugeot will come back.
We shall see. Okay, sir. Next, Haas and Hulk, desperately seeking podium. Both are on the Dusty Springfield program, hoping and wishing for the first podium. The North Carolina-based team has been in Formula One for 7 seasons, and the German driver, who in the past has driven for Williams and Renault, has driven more races than any other driver without being on the podium. He does have one pole position to his name at Interlagos from his Williams days. The team principal, Gunther Steiner, said that good things are waiting for Nico Hülkenberg if he is to secure that first podium. Mr. Portimao said, and I quote, "It will be more than a bottle of beer or wine," end quote. Well, given the team's budget situation, I think he might throw in a few hot dogs with relish and sauerkraut. Danke. Now, this is something I think you will feel good and maybe give me a nice bonus this year. I think Aston Martin will get a win before Haas gets a podium. I just can't figure out which Aston Martin driver will win a Grand Prix this season. And maybe you can help me.
Well, you never know, these days. Wouldn't it be bizarre if Stroll got the win before Fernando at Aston Martin? It would be an awkward moment, perhaps, but I'm open for anything these days. But of course, Fernando, he's such a brute. It has to happen this year.
Yes, and for me, he is now Señor Siempre Verde, Spanish for evergreen. No, it will be this. If he wins a race, I think it will be one of the most celebrated by all Grand Prix wins that I can think of. A lot more than Arnaud's first because it's such a great story. He was in Formula One, he went out, went through the GP2 engine and all that kind of stuff, but came back to Renault, went back to McLaren, went to Le Mans, went to Dakar Rally, and then comes back in the Mean Green Machine and becomes Jolly Green Giant. So we look forward to it. Well, Senor Alonso is Spanish speaking, so let's do an interview with the gentleman who is Portuguese speaking, Mr. Kiko Porto. This is a young talent from Brazil. I've been watching his career for a couple of years, and I got a chance to interview him recently. He's in the USF Pro2000 series, I think they call it now. This is like 2 steps below IndyCar racing, and this conversation took place at Sebring recently, and he's very friendly, very nice kid, and I wish him all the best. So please enjoy our chat with Kiko Porto. Okay folks, I'm here in Sebring with a young talented Brazilian driver, Kiko Porto. Kiko, bom dia, how are you today?
Bom dia, I'm good, feels fine. I have a race in a few hours, so I'm excited.
How is the American adventure going for you?
Cool, so like I started racing in America in 2018 in a F4 series. Since there, I love this country. I love the people that work here in racing especially. I race all around the world, but the environment here for racing in America is special. And this is my 6th year here in America racing, and it's awesome. My adventure here is awesome.
Great. Since you love America, what do you prefer, cheeseburgers or hot dogs?
Cheeseburgers, yeah, I'm this team.
That's good. Okay, most young talented Brazilian drivers go to Europe. What made you decide to race here in the US?
The first main thing was the price. We know that Europe is very expensive, and we look for the options here in the US. More than the opportunities along the Road to Win program, we know we have a lot of more opportunities to get there, and talent is a little bit more important than Europe it is now. Europe, we know, like, money is going in a direction that I think is going to be even worse in the future. So America, I think, we have more opportunity, especially like when you don't have that big money to spend.
In your first racing season in the US 2019, you won 3 races and finished second in the F4 championship. Very impressive. What were the high points and lows of the season for you?
On that year was just my second year in open wheel cars, so I was fast but struggling a little bit with experience. So during the season, I did, like, I would say wrong decisions of how fast, how many the tires, wait at the right moment to pass. So I think just a lack of experience was the thing.
Do you have a driver coach or you're learning by yourself?
Yeah, my driver coach is Beto Monteiro. He is right here.
Okay, good, very good. Okay, 2 years later, in 2021, you won the US Formula 2000 Championship. What were the best memories for you from that season?
So we started the season with some problems on the car. I just got my first victory on 3rd race, and I remember one of the best parts is like when we understand that to win a championship we don't need to win every race, but just finish top 5 every race. So it's what we did. Really focus on get points during the season, and definitely the best moment was in Mid-Ohio when I received the checkered flag, and the title was crazy good.
Who do you see as your main challengers for the championship this season?
So definitely this season in USF Pro 2000, I think would be the toughest season I ever had. Talking about the guys, I can say like 9 different drivers that very fast in specific moments of the season. But I would say the Pepe's driver like Jace and Miles Rowe, they are fast. But I also think that some TJ cars like Francesco Pizzi is showing up a good speed. So I have a lot of challenges here, definitely.
That's good. You have been with the same team since arriving in the US D-Force. You must be very comfortable and happy with their performance.
Yeah, I really trust in the potential of the team. When I started with them, they only had like 2 cars in F4, and right now they have in 3 different series. So we grow together, we achieve the same goals together, and the people really know me. I really like the people, and more than that, like more than know that they have the potential to win a championship, but they are very good people that I know that it's gonna be with me even in the bad moments of the season. So that's the most important thing.
Oval, street courses, and purpose-built racing tracks in American racing scene. How long it took to get comfortable on ovals?
I mean, you're never gonna get comfortable on ovals. If you get comfortable, it's because you're not that fast. So it's always challenging to really understand that to feel fast there, you need to feel comfortable. And that's the main goal that I think every driver in this series is trying to do.
A very famous American racer once said there are two types of drivers in oval racing. Those who have hit the wall and those who have not. Which one are you?
I didn't hit yet, but I'm pretty sure that some moment when we try to get to that speed, this will happen, but yeah.
So there is room for improvement. That's good. Okay, tell us about your karting days and winning. I think you won some big championship in Finlandia.
Yeah, so my karting day was a good old days. So I'm starting 2011 my career, and since 2013 2015 I won some in states in my state in Brazil. And then 2016 I won the Brazilian Championship, and then we decided to go to here in Europe. So I raced here in the Florida Winter Tour 2017. I did the pole, but the lack of experience I suffered a little bit during the races. And then later on in 2017 we did the Academy Trophy series, and I won the race in Finland. That was very special for me. And after that we understand that okay, we basically won everything that we could on karting. So let's go to next steps. So it's when we decided to go to F4.
Between Brazilian karting and European karting, did you see any big difference in terms of depth of competition or talent of drivers?
Definitely in Europe. It's not just talking about the European, but I would say like every good drivers from each country go to Europe. So there is basically like the guy that already win a national championship in own country, they go to Europe. So the level there is tough. Definitely Brazil have a lot of good drivers. One of my biggest rivals in karting was Matheus Morgado that won the World Championship this year. So we know we have a lot of good drivers there, but I would say in Europe, in the grid, like 40 on the grid is really good, and in Brazil we have like 15. So it's just more the number of the drivers, but we have really good drivers as well in Brazil.
There's one talented Brazilian racing there, Caio Collet. Are you friends with him?
Yeah. Yes, I raced with him on karting. He has been always fast since there.
Okay, I'm guessing your goal next 5 years, you want to see yourself in IndyCar racing?
Yeah, definitely. That's the main goal.
Okay, so here is the most important question. What is more important to you when you get to IndyCars? Winning the championship or winning the Indy 500?
This is tough. 500 special, but I think win a championship show more about how good you can be during a long season. Definitely, it's not easy win the 500, but you can get some luck and then win because the car is good. But like to win a championship, you need to prove yourself. Like even in the worst weekends, you need to like keep going, get some points. So I would say more the championship, but it's close.
Well, let me just give you a hint. If you win the Indy 500, you go to all the big talk shows and news shows in America, coast to coast. Okay, everybody knows you. And if you win the Indy Championship, the big prize you get is the IndyCar banquet. That's all there is to it. That's how big Indy is in this country. Yeah. Okay, what's your take on Formula One season? How do you rate Max Verstappen? And a very important question is, will Lewis Hamilton win championship number 8 before Alonso wins number 3? What say you?
Oh yeah, good question. So like Verstappen is doing everything that he can. He is doing like a perfect job. You see, he on the track is like maximize all the points. He's for me in the best level of his career now in the prime. Alonso just showing he is a monster, and no matter what, he's always be there. We saw him passing Paris on the start on the last race, so he is awesome. So for Lewis, he's a good driver. He proved himself a lot of times, but I don't know how long the Mercedes will take to get in the same speed that they had some years on the past. I see more Aston Martin as a progression, and like next year maybe get closer enough to Red Bull, to maybe Alonso like have the opportunity to pass Max. But I think for both, always depends how much the team's going to improve for the next season.
I think it was in Brazil some years ago, Alonso proved that you don't need to go to Ipanema or Copacabana to enjoy the beach chair.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, final question. Your country has produced 3 great world champions: Emerson Fittipaldi, Nelson Piquet, Ayrton Senna da Silva. Who is your favorite?
Like, I love all the 3, but Senna is it's different.
Fantastico. Thank you, Saint.
Kiko, thanks for joining F1Weekly.com. Nasir?
Yes, sir. Moving on. Light camera action. This is interesting, and you will love this. In a conference call with Formula One investor, Stefano Domenicali revealed how the film, which has entered production and will soon start shooting at Silverstone, will add another powerful layer of penetration for Formula One after the success of the Netflix series Drive to Survive. And this, of course, refers to what you mentioned at the top of the podcast. Now, this big budget movie has brought together big names from Top Gun Maverick, producer Jerry Bruckheimer, director Joseph Kosinski, and screenwriter Ethan Kruger, and all these 3 gents were at the US Grand Prix in Austin last year. And here is the best part. Lewis Hamilton has been assigned a co-production and advisory role with the project, which means 2 of our listeners, Mr. Brazier in the UK and Lush on the Loose in Land Down Under, have already booked their tickets. Mr. Rogers, when are you getting on Ticketmaster and booking your viewing of this wonderful movie?
Well, being the host of F1 Weekly, Nasir, I will be invited to the grand spectacle when it's released.
So who will send you the invitation, Brad Pitt or Lewis Hamilton, or both?
It'll be a bromantic invitation where it has them holding hands and blowing in a kiss format the invitation to me.
Wow, getting pretty cool here. Okay, sir, moving on. Under pressure. Nick de Vries, the one-time McLaren Junior driver, made a big impact on his debut at Monza in 2022 in a Williams scoring points in his very first race. Now, after 3 races this season, he is still without a point and has not been able to match his AlphaTauri teammate Tsunoda San. And I really thought he will blow Yuki away. Nick said, and I quote, "Pressure is always there in this world. As a driver in whatever category, you're always fighting to survive. The demand for places in motorsports is simply much greater than the supply. So there's always pressure, but it's really no different than any other years." End quote. I would like to see him survive and succeed in the piranha pool that is Formula One. Back in his karting days, which I remember following, Nick was performing like Max is doing today in Formula One. He was just unbelievable. But Formula One is all about what have you done for me lately, and questions are being asked. I have to say a lot of people, myself included, were saying the same thing about Charles Leclerc after his first few races with Sauber when he first came into Formula One. But times are different, and De Vries is with a different team where chop chop is the name of the game. So he really needs to do whatever the Dutch word is for andele, andele. Sir, you have any hope for him, or have you given up on him after 3 races?
I have given up on him. I'm sorry, but I see nothing exciting. He's struggling. Pretty soon it's going to be Brembo or Hitco. Yeah, it's over. Let's move on and focus on Aston Martin and El Machismo.
I have hope for him, but one driver I've given up on is Yuki Tsunoda. And not because of his talent, but because of his attitude and commitment and overall, package as a driver. I was very excited about him because I saw him in Formula 3 and Formula 2. He was and still very quick, but somehow, I think he's got too many things on his mind. But good for him, and we wish him well. Okay, sir, this is some sad news. Kerpen going kaput, which is Michael Schumacher's hometown, as you may know. It's a small town not too far from Cologne, and this town is facing demolition due to mining. Progress has to keep moving on. The expansion of the massive Hambach surface mine to the northwest of Kerpen, Mannheim, has led to the abandonment of the village where the Schumacher family once lived. The mine is a source of lignite, regarded as one of the most polluting forms of brown coal used for power generation. So I'm very surprised they're digging for this. Excavations are due to begin next year. Some notable landmarks will be spared demolition, which is good, and they include the Kerpen karting track, where Little Shomi and Little Ralphie race once upon a time. Now, in 2001, Michael raced at this track against a whippersnapper who would go on to match his number of championships. Any thoughts on Kerpen going kaput, sir?
It's a sad state of affairs. I don't know what the Germans are thinking. This is so awful. I don't even want to comment. I'm keeping it all inside.
Oh, very PC today, huh? Thank you. Okay, once upon a time there was a starry, starry night in Singapore. Question is still being asked.
$1 zillion. The question is, who let the dogs out? 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 Who let the dogs out?
PK Jr. described the final episode of the Crashgate saga saying, and I quote, there are two sides to every story, but this is his side. He said, and I quote, "We stayed for 2009, and then the story came out because they broke my contract, which they weren't supposed to do. I was supposed to run all year, and all of a sudden they said, now Grosjean is going to take your place, to which I said, you can't do that." End quote. Now, obviously, you remember at that time, the boss man was Flavio Briatore, technical director was Pat Simmons, and, they each blame the other for what happened. And PK continued, and I quote, "They treated me like a dog, and that's when I said, since you're kicking me out, thinking I'm trash, I think we need to set the record straight here." That's when everybody really found out about the story, which was horrible for me. It was very traumatizing, and it still is many times, because a lot of people don't understand it, and a lot of people judge without understanding the story. End quote. You know what is interesting? As part of this reading the story, I read, and he stated again, that his father was not at the track, so he could not call him or get in touch with him because of the time difference. I heard from a very, very reliable source who was at the race, and he said to me, Nelson Piquet Sr. was at that event. Now, I don't know what is the truth, but someday the truth will come out. You have any two French francs on this story, sir?
Well, let me tell you, the truth will come out when Fernando writes his memoirs.
What will be the story of his memoirs? That's I'm curious.
It's going to be exciting, I know. It'll become that'll be, are you ready? That'll be the second movie Lewis Hamilton and Brad Pitt work on, is the story of Fernando.
Yes. You've seen annual reports from major corporation or any public limited company. There's always a page which is blank, and it says intentionally left blank. So what his book will be the story of beating Michael Schumacher not once but twice, and the next page will say this page intentionally left blank, and voila, we go from 2006 championship to 2008. But good for him. Now, if he can sign the book for me in the blank area, I'll get a copy.
I'll arrange that.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so now we come to what you mentioned at the top of the show. Bobby D beaten by bats. This is very sad. Ex-Red Bull racer Robert Dornbusch, he was violently assaulted with bats last month, according to published reports. His expensive watch and phone were stolen. And at least he has a positive take on this. He said, and I quote, "It was intense. I don't wear expensive watches anymore, only an Apple Watch. Then at least I can count my steps," end quote. And this is getting very bad because it happened with Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Bernie Ecclestone. The only thing I will say, these public figures, obviously they can be recognized easily if they're in public. And even if you're not wearing anything, people know you have money. And if you have something expensive going on you, like Charles Leclerc wearing a $330,000 watch, you are, $330,000. Think about it. You are asking for trouble.
Yes. The problem is, see, all these people, and this is where Lewis can come in and explain it to them, that you need to go to the Compton class of street smarts, common sense, ghetto street smarts. And then all of a sudden you go, I was dumb. You realize everything, And Fresh Prince is one of the professors.
Oh, that's a very sound advice, sir. I may have to call you next time I'm driving through Compton and Wards.
Anytime, Nasir. You can also read my book.
Yes, very good. Very good. Okay, sir, now we go to Takes Two to Tango. This is very exciting, Mr. Rogers. Drivers who finish first and second most often in Formula One history. And you guessed it, the lucky one features in top 3 pairings. Lewis and Max have finished first and second so far 34 times. Very, very impressive. Lewis and one-hit wonder Nico Rosberg are second in the 1-2 train, logging 31 top 2 positions. On the podium again for the third time. This time LCH and Sebastian Vettel, 26 times playing tango at the top. Next we have number 25, shared between Michael Schumacher and his prancing horse pony Rubens Barrichello. Completing the top 5, we have the original and the everlasting model of intensity and rivalry. 23 times Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost shared the top 2 steps after a thrilling Formula One Grand Prix. When Senna won his final race for McLaren in Australia in 1993, Professor was on the podium with him. And I remember watching this race with my friends, and it was a very sort of a somber moment, We knew he was leaving McLaren, and the rivalry he had with Prost. He was there driving for Williams, and that's where Senna was going, and Prost was leaving the team because he was arriving, and we all know what happened after that. Okay, sir, now we come to Shanghai Surprise. This year's Chinese Grand Prix was relegated to the pages of history before it even took place. I thought this would be a good time to dim sum into the history of Chinese Grand Prix. Some brief factoid. 2006, victory number 91 and final Grand Prix success for Michael Schumacher. 2007, cat scratch fever, rookie championship stranded in the kitty litter. Listen to this, Mr. Rogers. Lewis Hamilton came into the race with a 17-point lead over Kimi Raikkonen and had a 12-point lead over his McLaren teammate. Who could that be? And after this race, only remaining race was Sao Paulo, Brazil. What happened in China was the perfect example of the saying, we win as a team and we lose as a team. And they sure did that. McLaren left LCH out in the rain way too long, and when they called him, he slipped into the kitty litter. And that was all. 2009, Sebastian Vettel gives Red Bull the first pole position and victory. And then after that season, he went on a 4 on the trot. Good for him. 2012, Michael Schumacher on front row in a Mercedes, but it was poleman Nico Rosberg who delivered the first win for Toto and the Silver Arrows in the modern era. Sir, shall we take a quick Dasani or Perrier break?
Please, Nasir, absolutely. So we'll be back after these brief messages.
Bonjour. Want to stay in a charming accommodation near the historic and famous Cognac and Bordeaux regions of southwestern France? Imagine yourself surrounded by the rolling hills and vineyards of the Charente region, sipping on cognac or the local aperitif Pinot de Charente. Opening in June 2012, Batignolles offers traditional French country lodging in rustic stone cottages, fully equipped with modern comforts, suitable for families, travelers, or groups. Share a home-cooked meal with your host and soak in the ambiance and joie de vivre of the tranquil and rural French countryside. Batignolles is only a 90-minute drive from the Bordeaux airport, or 30 minutes from the nearest train station in Angoulême. Navigate to batignolles.com for information or to book a reservation now. That's BASSINAUD.com. Allons-y.
Welcome back to F1Weekly.com. Clark Rogers here, your host. And now, as we spin the globe and go around the world with Motorsports Mondial and the king, the Swami himself, Nasir Hamid.
Thank you, sir. And today the Mondial is spinning from Long Beach, Southern California, a race I first went to in 1986. And then went there many, many times, great memories. And of course, once upon a time, it was a Formula One race. Can you imagine how many? I was watching the Indycar race, and it has always been a big crowd at Long Beach, except for the split years. But I was thinking, man, how many people will show up if the same track hosts a Formula One race? It will be unbelievable. But anyway, we'll start with Long Beach Grand Prix. It used to, for decades, it was sponsored by Toyota. Now it's sponsored by Acura. First pole and victory for young man from Jupiter, Florida, Kyle Kirkwood, driving for the man who took his first IndyCar victory at the same track in 1986, and that would be Michael Andretti. Did you watch the race, sir?
I did watch the race off and on, absolutely. I had it on, I do my dishes, get my mirepoix ready for my dinner. So yes, very exciting. I was impressed with Romain Grosjean, stayed out of trouble, and Scott Dixon got into trouble. So it was interesting. There were the usual cautions, but not too bad.
And Zach Brown was there. Apparently he was driving one of his historic cars, so that was good. But our man on the spot was Tim Schwartz, a long-time F1 Weekly Familia member. Since he is the official tech talk of the podcast, we are very pleased to present his conversation with race engineer Craig Hampson.
I'm here today at the Grand Prix of Long Beach with Craig Hampson of Arrow Mclaren Indycar team. Thank you very much for being here with me today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome. So Craig is a graduate of the University of Maryland with a degree in mechanical engineering, and he began his professional motorsports career in 1994 with Newman Haas. From there he went to Andretti, Dale Coyne, and is now at Arrow Mclaren Indycar team as a race engineer for the number 7 Alexander Rossi. So I want to focus mostly on technical aspects today, but first I just want to begin with, we're here after qualifying. What are your thoughts today on the session?
Pretty disappointed. There was a red flag in the middle of the second round of qualifying, and we were on what would have been our best lap when that red flag came out. Thereafter, there was a long repair, and pretty much everybody went out, and we were given only enough time to do one single lap. And honestly, the long downtime while they were doing the repair to the track, our tires cooled off, our brakes cooled off, and we didn't get them reactivated again. So teams that were able to do a good job with that improved, and we didn't, and it kind of kicked us downwards.
Yeah, it looked like there was a little water on the track, too, that needed to
be I mean, that wasn't a factor in that final. I mean, the fact is some people did go faster, and we didn't.
What do you think about the race setup, particularly at Long Beach, with the sort of unpredictable marine conditions we have here?
Yeah, I don't think I spend a lot of time thinking about the fog that might roll in. Obviously temperature and also solar radiation resulting in track temperature being higher or lower is pretty important to the way the tires interact with the surface, and then the ambient conditions for air pressure, how thick is the air, how humid is the air, all of that really affects the car quite a bit. So I think you'll see us adjust the car balance depending upon temperature and air density. And then also some people might adjust total downforce level depending upon whether the air is thicker or thinner.
Right, yeah. On the podcast we talk a lot about engineering trade-offs. You can have downforce, you can have drag. they sort of go together. You can't have one without the other.
You can't have one without the other unless you got a little magic somewhere. But,
Are there any particular trade-offs here that are especially challenging as an engineer to overcome?
Aerodynamically, some people will trim a little for race day, and as a result it'll be faster on the straight, but will not brake as well, will not take as good care of the tires. I think because of the spec nature of Indycar, everybody's got the same parts on the car. There isn't really a lot of variation in what people will do with that, so I think you'll probably see 2 different, maybe 3 different settings, but it's not dramatic. In terms of trade-offs of ride, dampers, springs, mechanical grip, there's all sorts of trade-offs, particularly at Long Beach. We've seen year in, year out, the bump on braking at turn 9 catches a lot of people out, and they'll either crash or go down the escape road. We actually have a new bump this year, which is just causing all sorts of trouble. They repaved turn 6 through turn 8, which is great, and it's really nice. Grip off at turn 6 is fabulous, but in the transition where it goes back to the old pavement right past the apex of turn 8, it's a horrific dip and then bump, and the car's bouncing around, and I think you're going to see 1 or 2 people make a mistake in the race, because it can catch you out and you can lose control of the car there. So if you want to make the car ride that particular bump well, you could work on that, but you're going to give up performance and grip like everywhere else around the track. So do you then just ignore that bump but take the risk of crashing there? And those are the kind of trade-offs that we very often have to make. Stiffer springs will be a lower car, better aerodynamics, more stable aero platform, but it's not good for tire longevity, not good for mechanical grip. Every track is a trade-off of that, and each team makes their own decisions as to what they do.
Fantastic. I want to go through your history a little bit. When did you know that you wanted to be an engineer, and also when did you know that you wanted to be involved in motorsport, and which happened first?
Engineer first, for sure. Okay. My dad was a car guy, pretty handy, so that was all pretty helpful, but as a kid I did, when you're really little you're into trains, right?
Right.
And then I did model rockets, and then I moved on to model airplanes, and then when I got my driver's license it was cars. So it kind of had that progression, but it was always I'm designing something, I'm building something, I'm making something, it's got a mechanical aspect to it. So that was kind of always there. I liked shop class. Shop class was cool. They don't have shop class anymore, I don't think, which I actually view as a shame. But in terms of, do I want to try and do this professionally? So I went to the University of Maryland. They had an organization, Society of Automotive Engineers. It's a professional society, but there are student chapters kind of at all the major engineering schools. And then within SAE, there are various competitions where you basically build a car and tune a car and race it against other colleges. And that is the way to do this. If you're an engineer and you want to go professional racing, you have to do that when you're in college. The obvious one is Formula SAE, or in Europe they call it Formula Student. I did do that. I actually started on the solar car project. It was kind of a big deal at that point because it was the first ever collegiate solar car race. So we did that, did pretty well in the United States, finished 3rd. That allowed us to then advance and go race across Australia. Finished, 7th, 6th, something like that. All really cool. That was a neat project, but if I'm honest, it's pretty slow. So an autocross car powered by a 60 horsepower motorcycle engine was cooler. And if I'm honest, I probably spent more time building a race car as a college than I did worrying about class and homework and all that kind of stuff. So it's a real juggling act, and I would tell students who want to do that, the GPA does still matter, because if you don't put your GPA on your resume, everybody's like, oh, how bad is it? If you do put it on there and it's a 2.7, people are like, So you do have to keep the GPA up, but you also have to really be one of the movers and shakers in the SAE team. And that actually shows that you can multitask, you work hard, you can put in the hours, you're devoted. Learning how to balance those two things is actually an important key for learning how to do this professionally.
Wow, that's fantastic advice. Thank you on behalf of all our young listeners.
Yeah.
What sort of difference do you see between the classroom learning and the amount of on-the-job learning when you were new into racing?
Yeah, the on-the-job learning is, 70% of this or something, and you don't know what you don't know, and you get exposed to so many things when you show up. And I think you actually come in thinking you know more than you actually know. But the classroom learning is important. you still need to be able to, write code, use MATLAB, analyze problems. I think a lot of engineering is just teaching you how to analyze and solve a problem. The math is important. You do need to be able to do calculus. You do need to be able to do matrix math. Everything is really heading towards a virtual world with, simulations, both offline and with driver in the loop, lots of tire modeling, CFD for aerodynamics. All of that kind of requires the smart stuff. Just even things like statics, dynamics, machine design for knowing how to figure out what torque a bolt should have or how thick a piece of aluminum needs to be. If you have access to a composites class to know the layout, all of that is really important. So definitely absorb all of that stuff, but then realize when you show up, once it's time to apply it to a practical world, and in particular, we have to make a lot of compromises all the time because A, it's a spec series, so there's things we'd like to do to the car, but we can't. Mm-hmm. And then B, you might be resource limited, or in particular, you might be time limited. And you have to make something the mechanics can work on. So in a lot of ways, the mechanics are one of your best resources because they've seen it all and done it all, and they'll tell you when you're being an idiot. And pretty much all young engineers are idiots for the first couple of years. But that's part of the learning process, and just being willing to embrace and listen and onboard their advice is, I think, a really helpful thing.
You mentioned simulation and analysis. How has the volume of data and the accessibility of that data changed motorsports?
Oh my God, it's totally changed. And it's actually one of the things that starts making me feel pretty old. To give an example, in 1994, I did have a laptop, we did have a data system, there were sensors on the car, and then when the race weekend was over, I left the laptop on the truck because, good Lord, what are you going to do with a laptop if it's not hooked into a race car? And now things are totally different. The volume of electronic information we have is frankly pretty overwhelming, be it video of our car, in-car camera, video from external camera stations, you versus other cars, in-car video from the other cars that you might have gotten off the internet or off the TV feed, timing and scoring loops, best sectors, what lap are they doing it on, and then all of the stuff that you have associated with your sensors and your simulation modeling and your car. The car has a black box on it like an airplane and a huge number of sensors. Those sensors are restricted by rules here at an Indycar weekend. Testing, if it's a private test, you can do whatever you want, but at an Indycar weekend there are restrictions on what you can run. But still, there is far more data than one human can look at any point in time. And then when you have specialists analyzing that data and they're sending in a report and you have to read all these reports and you got to organize all your thoughts and then get a car setup turned around in 2 hours before the next session, man, it's a lot. It is really a lot. And that is, I think, one of the biggest differences from when I started doing this to how it is now. Just the level at which we slice everything so finely now because of all that information. And then, the number of megabytes, gigabytes of data from every run and every competitor's run, that we all can look at. It's fairly overwhelming, to be honest.
Wow. That's really unique perspective. Thank you. I guess my final question for you is, do you have a special message for our listeners at home?
Well, number one, thanks for being an IndyCar fan, because without fans, this doesn't work, because, we want to have sponsors, because they pay for the whole deal, and sponsors do it because we have fans. So thanks for watching and being interested and reading online about it, and particularly if you come to a race and watch it on television or Peacock or whatever, that's super important. And then, two, I guess for the young engineers who might want to do it, definitely a cool job, doesn't get boring, no 2 days are the same, but you got to really know that you want it, because there are a lot of sacrifices. You do travel extensively. The work hours are significantly more than a lot of jobs. Some of it's a grind, so you really have to want it. So if you have any doubts whether you want it, then maybe you should get a regular job. But if you're addicted to it and you can't see yourself doing anything else, keep after it and keep knocking doors down. And if you have good talents and show some enthusiasm and some smarts, someone will give you a chance.
Thank you very much, Craig Hampson, Arrow Mclaren IndyCar team. I really appreciate your time, and best of luck tomorrow in the race.
All right, we'll do the best we can. Thank you.
Tim, keep up the good work. The check's in the mail. Craig, thanks for joining F1Weekly.com. Nasir?
Yes, sir, I did confirm to him and by email that check is in the mail with lots of zero and drawn on our new financial partner, Bank of Wishy-Washy. They're pretty big in La La Land. Okay, IMSA, International Motorsports Association, they were also racing in Long Beach on Saturday. Penske Porsche team did a Gerhard Berger Mexico 1986 program and ran the whole race without any change of tires and beat the competition. So that's very good. Sports car from America to Portugal, Portimao, World Endurance Championship. 5 different manufacturers in the top 5 led by Toyota, Ferrari, Penske, Porsche, Cadillac and Peugeot. So that's what the sport needs. And sir, you mentioned at the beginning this crash, this Porsche that ended up in the spectator area during testing, I believe, or practice. I could not believe when I saw that picture. The car was sitting on where normally fans would be sitting. What's going on there?
Very shocking. And not only that, when you see that and then you all of a sudden you flash to F1, that's not going to jive. Now, obviously, it's a different kind of a car. That car could get a lot of wind, a la Mark Webber and Mercedes at Le Mans. And they do get a lot of air and fly. So, but pretty frightening for sure. I mean, luckily it was practice session, no spectators, everybody's fine.
Yes, that's very good. Now, sir, we come back to the US of A, Texas, COTA, Circuit of the Americas for MotoGP. First win in 5 years for the Honda Satellite LCR team with Alex Rins taking victory. Luca Marini was second for Ducati. I did not know this till I heard on the telecast. He is the half-brother of Valentino Rossi. Fabio Quartararo was third on a Yamaha. Paco Bagnaia crashed out while leading. He said he is very upset, but 100% sure it was not his fault. The king of COTA, Marc Marquez, was not in the race due to injury. And now, sir, we go to our legal desk, Vienna calling. Niki Lauda's widow is suing for a big chunk of the late triple world champion's net worth. Why am I not surprised? It is believed that at the time of his death in 2019, he had shares in Mercedes AMG racing team, and his whole net worth was about $200 to $500 million. He had also started a couple of airlines, one of which was sold to Lufthansa. So he must have had made a pretty good Austrian penny. And according to one of the Austrian newspaper, 2 lawsuits relating to what now happens to that money are in progress in a court in Vienna. His wife at the time of his death was a lady by the name of Birgit Wetzinger, and I believe she was a flight attendant for one of his airlines when they met. She is asking the court to rule that 20 to 30 million euros from the assets of his foundation are awarded to her. Now, this is interesting. According to this newspaper, Courier, the foundation was already paying Ms. Birgit some 20,000 euros per month. So I guess money is never enough. A family member told the same newspaper, Birgit started all these proceedings, although the rest of the family fully agree with the way Niki arranged it. They respect his will and are ready to defend it in court. And let's see what happened. It's pretty sad when these things happen. I remember when Mark Donoghue was killed in Austria driving for Penske. When was this? 1975, I believe. Of course, his widow filed a lawsuit against Goodyear because tire had done blowed up. And that lawsuit was settled almost a decade later. And amazing how these things go.
Yeah, that's really sad. I'm glad that the kids are on Niki's side. I mean, she's still young, 44 years old. She wants to gather a little bit of money. But, I was always under the impression that Niki had met her on Braniff Airlines back in the day.
That could have been his first wife. Yes. Okay, now, sir, talking of sad, what really was sad was this World Rally Championship tragedy. Irish rally driver Craig Breen was killed when his Hyundai went off-road, and he was killed basically on the spot. His co-driver was not hurt. And this is very, very sad, man. I mean, I remember there was a guy named Attilio Bettega, and then this You remember that guy, Henri Toivonen, who got killed in a Lancia? Both of these drivers were killed. It really brought back memories of these two accidents in Corsica. And you would think rallying is safe, but anytime a machine is traveling over 100 miles per hour, it can be very, very dangerous. So our condolences and sympathies to the Breen family and friends. Moving on, sir, trouble in paradise. NASCAR teams recently boycotted a meeting with the sanctioning body. I say both sides needs to be careful whatever the issues are. They have a good thing going, especially on the American motorsports landscape. They don't need a Tony George in the France family. And as they say, you never know what you have until you lose it. Some people are even talking about there will be a split in NASCAR. What's your expert opinion on your favorite racing series?
Yes, there could be a split, but who knows? I mean, some people want to call it the North against the South split. So you know what I'm saying. These people need to get their shit together and shut the front door.
Very good. And sir, speaking of NASCAR, remember Pontiac excitement? Over the weekend, the Xfinity Series had a race. The title was Call 811 before you take 250. Okay? Call 811 before you dig 250. This really got me excited. Now I am looking forward seriously to the Bounty Hunters 400 at Homestead and the Roadkill 500 at Richmond, VA. Do you concur with me, Senor?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is exciting stuff. I always call 811 before I dig 250. So I think that's bitching, dude.
There is, all these people put different skits and videos on Facebook. You've seen that. There is this lady, she puts all these different things, like she's from different state in the U.S. and speaking like somebody from that state. So one of them was, she's from Florida, and she says, and this is actually on Facebook, she goes, "But not all criminals. Some of us are respected bounty hunters." That's the way it is. Okay, sir. Beauty before age and speed. The all-female series Formula W has come and gone with the wind. Jamie Chadwick was the Scarlett O'Hara of each season. But the FIA is not going to give up. Now we have the FIA Academy. This new series for ladies is coming up, featuring what they call 15 of the brightest up-and-coming talents. And this really got me excited. The talented field includes two sisters from UAE, Hamda and Amna Al-Qubaisi. Plus we have Lena Bueller, who is also part of the Sauber Driver Academy, as was the percolated Colombian Tatiana Calderon. 17-year-old Chloe Grant will be representing the land of Jim Clark and Jackie Stewart, so we wish her a wee bit of success. I just want to hear Mull of Kintyre when she wins a race. FIA is definitely on Jim McKay's program, spanning the globe to bring you constant variety of drivers. Meet fabulously fast Miss Maite Caceres from Uruguay. Now I must say some of these girls are very quick and have done a good job, but they have a long way to go to race with the Panthers and Jaguars lurking in the Formula 2 and Formula 3 jungle before reaching the Golden Safari land, that is, Formula Uno. And so, speaking of Safari, it brings us to Musical Mondial. Today we feature a theme from a movie called Hathari. And Mr. Rogers, I don't know if you have seen this movie, but I do recall going to a drive-in in Karachi in the late 60s with my neighbor and his papito to watch this movie. And before we play the music, we have famous last words thanks to Christian Horner. He was talking about dealing with Porsche and trying to be their power supplier and how things went with Ford. And this is what he said, and I quote, "In Ford, we now have a partner with the right attitude. They don't rip your hand off when you stick out a little finger." End quote. With that, we welcome Mr. Henry Mancini to the Palatial Studios to perform this beautiful piece of music. Thank you for listening, and please enjoy. And sir, finally has some good news. I've been trying to get in touch with some historical motorsports people for an interview for our special 1000 podcast. A few years ago, I reached out to this gentleman who was responsible for getting Michael Schumacher into Formula One, Mr. Jochen Nierpasch. He was head of motorsports at BMW, Ford, and Mercedes. And then COVID came, and last few days him and I have been exchanging emails. But on the auspicious occasion of July 4th, he wrote to me he has booked time to meet me. And this meeting will take place in Munich at the BMW offices, because he's still working for them as a motorsports advisor. A lot of history here. Or it will take place where he lives, which is a place called Kressbronn in south of Germany, near the Swiss border and Lake Constance, or as the natives call Bodensee. So I'm very thankful to Mr. Jochen Nierpasch. Look forward to seeing him, and this season hopefully we will go back to our normal ways of doing a lot of interviews. And I thank everybody for listening, and everybody have a good day.